The stars had always been kind to humanity. For 200 years, they had traveled among them, building colonies on distant worlds, making friends with alien species, and dreaming of a future filled with wonder. But on the morning of June 17, 2847, the stars turned cold. Commander Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the colony ship Hope's Journey, watching the blue marble of Earth grow smaller in the rear viewport. He was leading a convoy of 47 ships toward the outer rim of explored space, carrying 200,000 colonists to a new home. It was supposed to be a celebration, a new chapter for humanity. His communications officer, a young woman named Laura Price, suddenly went pale. Her hands trembled as she pressed her earpiece closer. "Commander," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "We're receiving an emergency broadcast from Earth Defense Command." Nathan felt his stomach drop. "Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled to life, and the voice of Admiral Henry Blake filled the room. The old man sounded tired, defeated. "To all human vessels in transit, this is Earth Defense Command. The Galactic Council has declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. Their combined fleet entered our system 40 minutes ago. We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy." The bridge crew stood frozen. Nathan gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Admiral Blake continued, his voice breaking. "To anyone who can hear this, do not return. Do not try to help us. Take our people and run as far as you can. Find somewhere safe. Survive. Remember us. Remember Earth. This is our final broadcast. God save humanity." The transmission ended. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Laura Price began to cry. Nathan forced himself to think clearly. He had 200,000 souls under his protection. Mothers, fathers, children, scientists and farmers, and teachers and dreamers. They were counting on him. "Helm," he said, keeping his voice steady. "Set a course for the dead expanse. Maximum speed." His pilot, a veteran named Chris Palmer, looked at him with wide eyes. "Sir? The dead expanse? No one has ever gone there. The council species say nothing can survive in that region." "Exactly," Nathan replied. "That's why they won't follow us there." The convoy changed course, turning away from the warm light of known space and toward the vast darkness between galaxies. Behind them, Earth's fate was being sealed. The Galactic Council had ruled the Orion Arm for over 50,000 years. 12 ancient species had formed an alliance long before humans learned to make fire. They controlled trade, technology, and territory with an iron grip. When humanity first ventured into space, the Council had watched with amusement. These small, soft creatures with their short lifespans and fragile bodies were no threat. They were almost cute in their enthusiasm. But humans grew quickly. They learned fast. They adapted to every environment. They made allies among the younger species who chafed under Council rule. In just 2 centuries, humanity had expanded to over 30 star systems. Their population had grown to 12 billion. Their technology was advancing at a rate that made the Council nervous. The Velthari, the Council's military leaders, were the first to demand action. "These humans breed like insects," the Velthari Admiral Krathnok had argued before the Council Assembly. "They spread to new worlds faster than any species in recorded history. If we do not stop them now, they will outnumber us within 1,000 years." The Mordani, masters of economics and resources, agreed. "Human traders are disrupting our carefully balanced markets. They offer better deals. They treat the lesser species as equals. They are destabilizing the entire galactic order." One by one, the 12 Council species voted. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would be purified. The purification fleet consisted of over 100,000 warships from all 12 species. They arrived in the Sol system like a swarm of locusts blocking out the sun. Earth's defense fleet fought bravely. Admiral Blake led the charge himself, knowing it was hopeless. Human ships were destroyed by the hundreds. Orbital stations were torn apart. The moon was cracked open by weapons designed to shatter planets, and then they turned their attention to Earth itself. The bombardment lasted 3 days. Every city, every town, every village was reduced to ash. The oceans boiled away. The atmosphere burned. Mountains crumbled. By the time the Council fleet departed, Earth was nothing but a ball of molten rock floating in the void. 12 billion humans died in those 3 days. 12 billion dreams ended. 12 billion voices silenced forever. The Galactic Council issued a statement calling the action a necessary measure for galactic peace. They expressed no regret. They held no funerals. In their eyes, they had simply removed a pest before it could become a problem. News of the destruction spread across the galaxy. The younger species, those who had called humans friends, mourned in secret. They did not dare speak against the Council openly. To do so meant death. Meanwhile, Nathan Cole's convoy flew deeper into the dead expanse. The region earned its name from the complete absence of stars, planets, or any resources. It was a void between galaxies, a place where nothing existed except darkness and cold. The Council species believed nothing could survive there. They were wrong. On the 5th day of their journey, Nathan gathered the leaders of all 47 ships for a meeting. Their faces appeared on screens around his conference room, each one showing the same mixture of grief and fear. "We cannot bring back what we lost," Nathan said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "Our families are gone. Our home is gone. Everything we built for 200 years has been destroyed. The Council thinks they have ended humanity. They think we will drift into this void and die." He paused, letting his words sink in. Then he straightened his shoulders and looked directly into the camera. "They are wrong. We will not die here. We will build here. We will grow here. We will become something the Council cannot imagine. And one day, when our children's children's children are ready, we will return. Not as victims, not as refugees, but as a force that will make the galaxy tremble." The other leaders stared at him. Some looked doubtful. Some looked scared. But slowly, one by one, they began to nod. Laura Price, who had been standing quietly in the corner, wiped the tears from her face and spoke for the first time since leaving Earth. "How long?" she asked. "How long until we can go back?" Nathan looked out at the endless darkness surrounding them. "However long it takes," he said. 100 years. 1,000 years. 3,000 years. Time is meaningless now. Revenge is patient. And humanity has learned to be very, very patient." The convoy flew on, disappearing into the void. Behind them, the galaxy moved on, forgetting that humans had ever existed. They would remember soon enough. 3,000 years passed in the galaxy like water flowing down a river. Empires rose and fell. Stars were born and died. The Galactic Council continued its rule over the Orion Arm, growing fat and lazy with power. And slowly, surely, the memory of humanity faded into legend. The Council species taught their children about the humans as a warning. They were a young species, the teachers would say, filled with dangerous ambition. They expanded too quickly. They challenged the natural order, and so they were removed, as all threats to peace must be removed. The lesson was clear. Obey the Council, or suffer the same fate. The younger species, those who had once called humans friends, learned to keep their mouths shut. They bowed to their masters. They paid their taxes. They pretended to forget the kind aliens who had treated them as equals. But in dark corners and hidden places, they kept small memories alive. A human book here. A piece of human music there. Tiny sparks of hope in an ocean of fear. In the dead expanse, those tiny sparks had grown into a blazing fire. The first century after the escape had been the hardest. The 47 ships had limited supplies. The void between galaxies offered almost nothing. Many people died from hunger, from cold, from despair. Some wanted to give up. Some wanted to fly back and surrender to the Council, begging for mercy that would never come. But Nathan Cole held them together. He reminded them every day of what they had lost. He reminded them of what they were fighting for. And slowly, painfully, they began to build. They found ways to harvest energy from the cosmic background radiation that filled the void. They developed new methods of recycling every molecule of waste. They engineered crops that could grow in artificial light. Generation by generation, they transformed their fragile fleet of colony ships into a thriving civilization. Nathan Cole died at the age of 112. His last words to his daughter, Maria Cole, were simple: never forget, never forgive, never stop building. Maria carried his message to the next generation. Her son carried it to the generation after that. The Cole family became the leaders of what they now called the Terran Remnant, passing down the sacred duty of vengeance like a torch in the darkness. By the 500th year, the Terran Remnant had grown to 2 million people. They had built massive space stations from asteroids they dragged out of nearby galaxies. They had developed faster than light travel that was 3 times more efficient than anything the Council possessed. They had learned to manipulate gravity itself, bending the fabric of space to their will. By the 1000th year, they numbered 50 million. Their scientists had cracked the secrets of aging, extending human lifespans to 300 years. Their engineers had designed weapons that could destroy planets with a single shot. Their soldiers trained in combat techniques that made Council warriors look like children playing with sticks. By the 2000th year, their population had reached 500 million. They had built an armada of warships that stretched across the void like a steel forest. They had developed shields that could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. They had created artificial intelligences that could predict enemy movements before they happened. And they waited. Now, in the year 5847, exactly 3,000 years after Earth's destruction, Admiral Katie Morgan stood before the completed Judgment Fleet. She was the direct descendant of Nathan Cole through his daughter Maria's line. She had dedicated her entire life to this moment. The Judgment Fleet was a sight that would have made the ancient gods weep with fear. 10,000 warships, each one a kilometer long, armed with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Behind them, support vessels carried supplies for a campaign that could last decades. In total, over 100 million humans were ready to return to the galaxy that had tried to erase them. Katie walked through the main hangar of her flagship, the Remembrance. The ship was named for what they had lost, and for what they would never let the galaxy forget. Around her, crews prepared their stations. Pilots ran final checks on their fighters. Engineers made last adjustments to the engines that would carry them home. A young officer named Eric Grant approached her with a data tablet. "Admiral, all ships report ready for departure. The fleet is waiting for your order." Katie took the tablet and reviewed the status reports. Everything was perfect. 3,000 years of preparation had led to this single moment. "Assemble all ships for the address," she said. "It's time." Within the hour, every human in the Judgment Fleet was watching their screens. Katie stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, looking into the camera that would broadcast her words across the void. "My fellow humans," she began, her voice steady and strong. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors fled into this darkness. They were broken. They were afraid. They had lost everything they loved. The Galactic Council believed they had ended our story. They wrote us into their history books as a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens to species that dare to challenge their power. She paused, letting the weight of history settle over her audience. But our ancestors did not give up. They did not surrender to despair. In the coldest, emptiest place in the universe, they built a new home. They raised children. They developed technology that would make the Council tremble. And they passed down a single message through every generation. Remember. Remember Earth. Remember the 12 billion who died. Remember the blue skies and green forests that were stolen from us. Katie's eyes hardened, and her voice grew cold. "I have never seen a blue sky. None of us have. We have only seen the darkness of the void and the cold light of distant stars. We grew up on stories of a world we could never visit, surrounded by ghosts of people we could never meet. The Council took that from us. They took our past, our home, our birthright." She raised her hand, pointing toward the distant glow of the galaxy. Today, we take it back. Today, we return to the galaxy that forgot us. Today, we remind every species in the Orion Arm that humanity does not stay dead. We do not forgive those who try to destroy us, and we do not forget. The crew of the Remembrance began to cheer. The sound spread across the fleet as millions of humans raised their voices together. 3,000 years ago, they called us a pest, to be exterminated, Katie shouted over the noise. Today, they will learn what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. Set course for the galaxy. The Judgment Fleet flies at dawn. Across 10,000 ships, engines roared to life. The greatest military force the universe had ever seen began to move. Emerging from the dead expanse like a nightmare given form, they had waited 3,000 years. The waiting was over. The first warning came to the Galactic Council as a simple communication failure. The Velthari homeworld, heart of the Council's military operations, stopped responding to routine messages. At first, the Council assumed it was a technical problem. Equipment failures happened all the time. Then they sent a ship to investigate. The pilot's final transmission lasted only 3 seconds. "There's nothing here," she screamed into her communicator. "The whole planet is just gone. Oh gods, what could do Thai?" The transmission cut to static. Council Speaker Zerthax, a towering Mordani with scales the color of old bronze, called an emergency meeting. "There must be a natural explanation," he insisted, his voice trembling despite his best efforts to sound calm. "A rogue black hole, perhaps? Or some unknown spatial phenomenon?" The other council members nodded eagerly. Yes, a natural disaster. That made sense. The universe was a dangerous place. These things happened. Then the Krell shipyards vanished. 47 orbital facilities, capable of producing hundreds of warships per year, simply ceased to exist. No debris, no distress signals, no survivors. Then the Asfari agricultural worlds went dark. Then the Mordani mining colonies. Then 3 Velthari military outposts along the rim. Each time, the pattern was the same. First, all communications would stop. Then any ship sent to investigate would disappear. When the Council finally gathered enough courage to send a full fleet to one of the destroyed locations, they found nothing but empty space where thriving civilizations had once existed. Fear spread through the Council like a disease. They had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They had faced rebellions, natural disasters, and every conceivable threat, but they had never faced anything like this. An enemy that struck without warning, that left no trace, that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish like a ghost. Lieutenant Eric Grant was the first human to make direct contact with Council forces. His reconnaissance squadron of 12 small ships had been scouting the Cygnus relay station when a Mordani patrol fleet of 300 vessels emerged from hyperspace. The Mordani commander broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, you have entered Mordani territory. Identify yourselves immediately or be destroyed." Eric looked at his crew. They were young, most of them born in the void, trained since childhood for this moment. He could see the mixture of fear and excitement in their eyes. "Open a channel," he said calmly. The communication link connected, and Eric's face appeared on the Mordani commander's screen. The alien's eyes went wide. He recognized the features immediately. The soft skin, the strange hair, the 5-fingered hands. Impossible. "This is Lieutenant Eric Grant of the Terran Judgment Fleet," Eric said, his voice cold as ice. "You know what we are. You know why we're here. You have one chance to surrender and tell your council that humanity has returned. Take it." The Mordani commander's shock quickly turned to rage. "Humans? You should be extinct. You are nothing but ghosts and stories meant to frighten children. Destroy them." 300 Mordani ships opened fire simultaneously. Plasma beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds filled the space around Eric's squadron. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Eric's ships didn't even move. The weapons struck their shields and vanished, absorbed like raindrops falling into an ocean. The Mordani fired again. And again. Nothing worked. Interesting, Eric said, watching the enemy's attacks splash harmlessly against his defenses. Are you finished? He gave a small hand signal to his weapons officer. Return fire. What happened next would become legend across the galaxy. Eric's 12 ships unleashed weapons that the Mordani had never seen before. Beams of concentrated gravity tore through their hulls like paper. Missiles that phase-shifted through their shields detonated inside their reactors. Ships that tried to flee were caught by weapons that folded space itself, crushing them into balls of twisted metal. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, all 300 Mordani ships were destroyed. Eric's squadron had not suffered a single casualty. Send a message to all Council frequencies, Eric ordered. Tell them the ghosts have returned. Tell them the children's stories are real. And tell them we're coming for all of them. The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Council tried to suppress it. But too many people had heard. Too many species had received the transmission. The impossible had happened. Humanity had survived. In the following weeks, the Judgment Fleet emerged from hiding and began its advance. Admiral Katie Morgan led the main force toward the Galactic Core, destroying Council military installations with brutal efficiency. No one was spared. No mercy was shown. 3,000 years of rage had to be satisfied. But something unexpected happened along the way. The younger species, those who had been enslaved by the Council for millennia, began to rebel. They had kept those tiny sparks of human memory alive all these centuries. They remembered the kind aliens who had treated them as friends. And now, seeing humanity's triumphant return, they found the courage to fight back. The Rilari, a species of gentle herbivores who had been forced to work in Council mines for generations, rose up against their Mordani overlords. The Thesan, a race of brilliant scientists who had been forced to develop weapons for the Council, sabotaged their own creations. The Vorn, massive beings with strength to match the Velthari, joined the human fleet directly, offering their ships and warriors to the cause. Katie Morgan welcomed them all. The Council wanted to divide us, she told a gathering of allied species commanders. They wanted us to fear each other, to fight each other, to be too weak to resist. But humanity has learned something in 3,000 years of exile. We are stronger together than we are apart. Join us, and we will build a galaxy where no species is enslaved, where no civilization is destroyed for daring to dream, where every being has the right to reach for the stars. The alliance grew larger with each passing day. What had started as a human war of vengeance was becoming something more. It was becoming a revolution. Speaker Zirthax watched the reports flood into Council headquarters with growing horror. World after world falling, fleet after fleet destroyed, allies abandoning them by the dozens. The empire they had built over 50,000 years was crumbling like sand in the wind. We must negotiate, he said to the other Council members. We must offer the humans whatever they want. Territory, resources, slaves, anything. We cannot win this war. The Velthari representative slammed his fist on the table. Surrender to humans? To a species we exterminated 3,000 years ago? Impossible. We will gather every ship, every weapon, every soldier in our empire. We will make our stand at the nexus of Tharn, and we will crush these upstart vermin once and for all. The vote was close, but in the end, pride won over wisdom. The Council would not surrender. They would fight to the last ship, the last soldier, the last breath. When Katie Morgan received intelligence about the Council's decision, she smiled grimly. Then we'll meet them at Tharn, she said, and we'll finish what they started 3,000 years ago. The final battle was coming. And humanity was ready. The Nexus of Tharn was the heart of Council power. It was a massive space station built around an artificial star, created by the combined efforts of all 12 founding species over 10,000 years. The station served as the political capital, the military command center, and the spiritual symbol of Council unity. Whoever controlled the Nexus controlled the galaxy. The Council gathered every ship they could find. Every reserve fleet was called up. Every retired officer was brought back to service. Every species that still owed them loyalty sent whatever vessels they could spare. In total, 2 million warships assembled around the Nexus, creating a defensive sphere so thick that no light could pass through. Admiral Krathvok, the new Velthari Supreme Commander after his predecessor died at the Krell shipyards, looked at the assembled armada with pride. "Let the humans come," he broadcast to his fleet. "Let them see the true might of the Galactic Council. Let them understand that their rebellion ends here." The human judgment fleet arrived 3 days later. Admiral Katie Morgan stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, watching the tactical display fill with enemy contacts. 2 million ships. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Any other species would have turned and run at the sight. Katie smiled. "They really brought everyone, didn't they?" Captain Daniel Hart, her fleet coordinator, nodded grimly. "They outnumber us 200 to 1, Admiral. Even with our technological advantage, these odds are..." He paused, searching for the right word. "Perfect," Katie finished for him. "They're perfect. I want them all in one place. I want them to watch what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." She pressed the fleet-wide communication button. "All ships, prepare for synchronized jump. We're going to give the Council a present they'll never forget." Across 10,000 human warships, crews ran to battle stations. Pilots climbed into their fighters. Weapons officers armed systems that had been waiting 3,000 years to be used. In the Allied vessels that had joined the fleet, warriors from dozens of species prepared to fight alongside their human liberators. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Katie thought about her ancestors. She thought about Nathan Cole, fleeing into the void with 200,000 refugees. She thought about Maria Cole, building the first stations in the dead expanse. She thought about every generation that had passed down the sacred duty of remembrance. 3, 2, 1. Jump. The Judgment Fleet vanished from normal space and reappeared in a perfect sphere surrounding the Council Armada. 10,000 ships emerged simultaneously, catching the enemy in a trap they couldn't escape. It was a maneuver that should have been impossible, requiring coordination that no other species could achieve. But humans had practiced this for 3,000 years. Admiral Krathvok stared at his display in shock. The humans weren't just attacking. They had surrounded his entire fleet in a single instant. "All ships, engage. Destroy them." The battle began. Council ships opened fire with everything they had. Millions of weapons lit up the darkness of space. Plasma beams crossed paths with railgun rounds. Missiles swarmed like angry insects. The firepower being unleashed would have destroyed entire star systems. The human shields held. "Return fire," Katie ordered calmly. "Focus on their command ships first. Let's show them what real weapons look like." The Remembrance's main gun powered up. It was called the Gravity Lance, a weapon that created a focused beam of gravitational force so intense that it could collapse matter into neutronium. The beam struck the Velthari flagship directly, and the massive warship simply crumpled in on itself like a crushed tin can. Admiral Krathvok didn't even have time to scream. Across the battlefield, human ships unleashed similar devastation. Phase missiles appeared inside enemy vessels, bypassing shields entirely. Spatial distortion weapons tore holes in the fabric of reality, pulling ships into miniature black holes. Electromagnetic pulses disabled thousands of vessels at once, leaving them floating helplessly in the void. The Council fleet fought back with desperate fury. They launched wave after wave of fighters. They rammed human ships with their own vessels. They detonated nuclear weapons at point-blank range. Nothing worked. The battle raged for 3 days and 3 nights. The Council threw everything they had at the human fleet. They tried tactics that had worked for 50,000 years. They tried strategies from their most ancient wars. They tried things they had never tried before. Born of pure desperation, every attempt failed. By the 3rd day, The Council fleet had been reduced to less than 200,000 ships. The survivors clustered around the nexus of Tharn itself, using the station's massive shields as a final line of defense. Bodies and wreckage floated through space in every direction. The light of burning ships illuminated the darkness like a field of dying stars. Speaker Zerthax, who had been watching the battle from the Nexus's command center, finally accepted the truth. They had lost. The Council's 50,000 years of dominion were over. There was only one option left. "Open a channel to the human flagship," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. "We surrender. We accept any terms they offer. Just, please, stop." The message reached the remembrance. Katie read it on her screen, her face showing no emotion. Around her, the bridge crew waited in silence. They had fought for 3 days without rest. They had lost ships, lost friends, lost family, but they had won. "Admiral," Captain Hart said quietly, "they're surrendering. What are your orders?" Katie stood up from her command chair and walked to the front viewport. Outside, the burning remains of the Council fleet drifted past. She thought about Earth. She thought about 12 billion people dying in fire. She thought about 3,000 years of exile in the cold darkness between galaxies. She thought about the blue skies her grandmother had described, the green forests, the cities full of laughter, all gone forever. "Open a channel," she said. "Let me speak to them directly." Her face appeared on every screen in the surviving Council fleet and on every display in the Nexus of Tharn. Zerthax looked at the human admiral with eyes full of fear. "Speaker Zerthax," Katie began, her voice echoing across the void. 3,000 years ago, your ancestors made a choice. They could have welcomed humanity as equals. They could have shared this galaxy with us. Instead, they chose extermination. They murdered 12 billion innocent people. They destroyed our home. They thought they had ended our story." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "Now you want to surrender. You want mercy. You want terms." Her voice grew colder than the void itself. "My grandmother used to tell me stories that her grandmother told her. Stories about blue skies and green forests and cities full of laughter. None of us have ever seen any of those things. You took them from us. You stole our birthright, our history, our world." Zerthax fell to his knees. "Please," he begged. "We were wrong. Our ancestors were wrong. We will give you anything. Territory, resources, slaves. Just spare us." Katie shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. We didn't come here for territory. We didn't come here for resources. We came here for retribution, and retribution cannot be negotiated." She turned to her weapons officer. "Target the Nexus of Tharn and all remaining enemy vessels. Fire everything." The Council fleet and the ancient station vanished in a storm of gravity beams, phase missiles, and spatial distortions. 200,000 ships, and the greatest structure the galaxy had ever known were erased from existence in less than 60 seconds. When the light faded, there was nothing left but empty space. Katie Morgan stood alone at the viewport, looking out at the silence. Behind her, her crew began to cheer. The war was over. The Council was destroyed. Humanity had won. But Katie didn't cheer. She just stood there, watching the darkness, thinking about the 12 billion who would never see this moment. "It's done," she whispered to no one in particular. "We kept our promise. We never forgot. We never forgave." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Rest now, grandmother. Rest now, all of you. Earth has been avenged." The galaxy held its breath. The Galactic Council, rulers of the Orion Arm for 50,000 years, had been destroyed in a single battle. The Nexus of Tharn, symbol of their eternal power, was nothing but scattered atoms drifting through space. The 12 founding species were scattered, leaderless, and terrified. Everyone waited to see what humanity would do next. The younger species expected revenge. They had spent millennia watching the Council crush rebellions with brutal efficiency. Now that humans had the power, surely they would do the same. They would enslave the Council species. They would burn their worlds. They would repay 3,000 years of exile with 3,000 years of suffering. But Admiral Katie Morgan had other plans. 1 month after the Battle of Tharn, she called a gathering of all species on a neutral station near the galactic core. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations arrived. Some hopeful, some terrified, some simply curious. The council species sent delegates too, expecting to negotiate the terms of their punishment. Katie stood before them all in a simple uniform, without medals or decorations. She looked tired. The weight of what she had done, and what she was about to do, showed in the lines on her face. "I know what you're expecting," she began, her voice carrying through the massive assembly hall. "You're expecting vengeance. You're expecting us to do to the council what they did to us. Some of you are probably hoping for it. After all, the council species made many enemies over 50,000 years." She paused, looking at the faces around her. Some angry, some afraid, some confused. But humanity did not survive 3,000 years of exile just to become what we hated. We did not endure the darkness between galaxies just to bring that darkness to others. Our ancestors fled into the void carrying one thing above all else: hope. Hope that one day we would return. Hope that we could build something better than what was taken from us. The hall fell completely silent. "Today, I am announcing the formation of the Terran Concord. It will be a new galactic government, built on principles that humanity has carried through the centuries. Every species, great or small, will have an equal voice. Every civilization will be free to govern itself. There will be no masters and no slaves. No purifications. No exterminations. Only cooperation, trade, and mutual respect." Murmurs spread through the crowd. This was not what anyone expected. "The council species are invited to join as well," Katie continued. "Not as conquered subjects. Not as slaves. As equals. The sins of their ancestors were terrible. But we will not punish children for the crimes of their parents. Those who committed the destruction of Earth are long dead. Those who remain had no part in that decision. They deserve the same chance at peace as everyone else." A Velthari delegate stood up, his face showing shock and disbelief. "Why?" he demanded. "Your people were slaughtered. Your world was destroyed. You have the power to crush us forever. Why show mercy?" Katie smiled sadly. "Because that's not who we were. Before the fire, before the exile, before the war, humanity was a species of dreamers. We looked up at the stars and wondered what friends we might find there. We didn't want to conquer the galaxy. We wanted to explore it. The council tried to burn that out of us. They failed." She walked to the edge of the stage, looking directly at the Velthari. "Do you know what my grandmother used to tell me? She said that the true strength of humanity was never in our weapons or our technology. It was in our ability to hope when hope seemed foolish, to love when love seemed dangerous, to forgive when forgiveness seemed impossible. That is the inheritance I carry. That is what I choose to honor today." Commander Sam Mitchell, head of the new Concord's diplomatic corps, stepped forward with a document. It was the new charter. Written over the past month with input from allied species, the document established basic rights for all beings, created systems for peaceful resolution of disputes, and set up frameworks for shared scientific research and trade. One by one, species began to sign. The allies came first, those who had fought alongside humanity against the Council. Then came the neutral species, those who had watched from the sidelines. And finally, slowly, hesitantly, the former Council species added their marks as well. By the end of the day, over 200 civilizations had joined the Terran Concord. It was the beginning of a new era. In the months and years that followed, the Concord grew stronger. Species that had been enemies for millennia learned to work together. Trade routes that had been controlled by the Council were open to all. Scientific knowledge that had been hoarded by the elite was shared freely. The galaxy began to heal. Katie Morgan retired from military service 1 year after the Battle of Tharn. She had led humanity through its greatest trial and brought them to victory. Now it was time for others to lead. She moved to a small station orbiting a quiet red dwarf star, far from the centers of power, seeking the peace she had fought so hard to create. A young journalist named Lucy Palmer traveled to interview her. Lucy was the great-granddaughter of Chris Palmer, the pilot who had flown Nathan Cole's convoy into the void 3,000 years ago. Her family had served humanity through every generation of exile. Now she wanted to understand the woman who had finished what her ancestors began. "Admiral Morgan," Lucy asked, sitting across from Katie in her modest quarters. "The galaxy expected humanity to take revenge, to enslave those who enslaved us, to destroy those who destroyed us. Why didn't you?" Katie looked out her viewport at the soft red light of the star. "Because revenge isn't the same as justice," she said quietly. "We destroyed the Council's power. We ended their ability to ever threaten us again. That was justice. But if we had enslaved their people, burned their worlds, made them suffer as we suffered, we would have become just like them. And then their victory would have been complete. They would have turned us into monsters." Lucy nodded, writing quickly in her notebook. "But isn't it hard, knowing what they did? Seeing their descendants walking free?" Katie was quiet for a long moment. "Every day," she admitted. "Every single day. I think about Earth. I think about 12 billion people who will never know that we won. I think about everything we lost. And some part of me wants to make the entire galaxy pay for that." She turned to face Lucy directly. "But then I remember what my grandmother told me. She said that holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting your enemy to die. The Council wanted us to become bitter and broken. They wanted us to lose our humanity. The greatest revenge we could ever take is to prove them wrong. To survive. To thrive. To build something beautiful in the ashes of what they destroyed." Lucy asked one final question. "Will humanity ever return to Earth?" Katie smiled and pointed out the viewport. In the distance, barely visible against the stars, massive construction ships swarmed around a huge project. It looked like a planet being assembled from billions of pieces. "We're not going back to Earth," Katie said. "Earth is gone. We can't change that. But we can build something new. That out there is Project Genesis. We're using the debris from the Sol system, the shattered remains of Earth and the Moon and everything we lost, to construct a new world. It will take centuries to complete. But when it's done, it will be a new home for humanity. A new beginning." She leaned back in her chair, a peaceful expression on her face. "And this time, no one will ever take it from us." Lucy finished her interview and prepared to leave. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. "What do you think your ancestors would say if they could see what humanity has become?" Katie thought about it for a long moment. She thought about Nathan Cole, leading his desperate convoy into the unknown. She thought about Maria Cole, building the first stations in the void. She thought about every generation that had kept hope alive in the darkness. "I think they would be proud," she said finally. "Not because we won the war. Not because we destroyed our enemies. But because we never lost who we were. We stayed human, even when the universe gave us every reason not to. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all." Outside the viewport, the red dwarf star glowed warmly. The construction ships continued their endless work, and somewhere out there, across the billions of stars of the galaxy, a new era of peace was beginning. 3,000 years ago, humanity had been scattered to the void, broken and forgotten. Today, they were home.